Where should I go? What should I do? That was the question at the time. So I followed a teacher's recommendation. Stefan, if you really want to learn the business, you have to work for the old monk in Bad Herrenalb. If you get a good report card there, you can work anywhere in the industry. Well, the Black Forest is one of the most picturesque areas in Germany. Monasteries, 400-year-old houses, the traditional bobblehead, wooden water wheels, lush farms, and of course, it is the home of the Kuckucksclock. There it was, Mönch's Posthotel in all its glory with its Michelin star decorated gourmet restaurant, the Klosterschenke. I applied and interviewed with Mr. Mönch Jr. here on the far right. It was love at first sight. I saw the class of his operation and he saw the potential in me. The Mönch family had owned this property since 1863. Here's some old footage from a reopening 100 years later under the firm management of Mr. and Mrs. Mönch Sr. They had brought up the hotel to world-class standard and were still in charge when I worked there. Mönch means monk, and as I experienced later, his nickname, the Old Monk, was not because mistakes were met with forgiveness and love, but with harsh measures to discourage any future wrongdoing. Here they are welcoming guests and greeting dignitaries. The pride of the operation was the former postal station, turned into a gourmet restaurant renowned in the region and beyond, the Klosterschenke. History, however, was not of great interest to me at the time. I just wanted to live in the now. Quickly I got used to and enjoyed the grand style of Mönch's Posthotel and virtually floated through the dining room, seating guests, recommending food, and opening expensive bottles of wine. One evening, the owners of a famous jewelry store from Baden-Baden were guests of the Mönchs. Mönch Senior, that was. The table had ordered rack of lamb in a Dijon herb crust for 4. I saw my opportunity impress at the highest level and volunteered with waitstaff to do the honors. Tableside cutting and serving. After all, I had learned everything that needed to be learned at Hotelfachschule. So what could go wrong, right? As I nonchalantly lifted the 3-pound piece of culinary art over to the wooden carving board, it slipped, twisted mid-air, and fell onto the cutting board, only to bounce, crusted side first, onto the ceramic floor one can see in this historic picture. Time stood still. But with a sense of logical practicality, I took the now empty platter, ducked down, grabbed the meat, while waitstaff began to plate the vegetables and pomme gratin, very slowly, to gain valuable time. The chef's eyes widened in disbelief as I mumbled something about the crust coming off while serving and that we needed a retouch. Thank God there were no kitchen knives close by. I probably would have felt one in my chest by now. Reapproaching the table, I calmly mentioned that the meat had been undercooked, but that it was perfect now. I sliced and served it with mint sauce and a perfect smile. One has to realize that Mr. Mönch had no choice but to bite his tongue and continue to entertain his guests instead of firing me on the spot. I knew, however, later that night I would get it for sure. As he called me over after dinner with a snap of his fingers, I was ready to die. Mr. Preisnummer, please tell the kitchen. I closed my eyes like being ready for execution by hanging. We really enjoyed the lamb, broiled to perfection. Lesson learned. They actually must have been so absorbed in their conversation that they didn't even notice me dropping their meal. I did what I had to do in the situation and it all turned out okay. Or, of course, maybe me and my whole show was not as important to them as I thought it would be. Susanne, my girlfriend at the time and closest confidant working there, just said, "Lucky you, just don't tell Junior." I did, but only years later. I learned from my mistake, and I was proud to end my first year of professional life with a 2-page reference letter which ended with the most desired sentence: "Our door remains open at any time he desires to work for us again." What a ride in luxury, style, class, and high-profile clientele. My next challenge in life would turn out to be quite the opposite. The German army had drafted me to report for basic training back at the eastern border.